In 2014, Nova Incorporated reported $12.5 million in free cash flow to the firm, $1.5 million in interest, and $3.5 million in net borrowing. If its corporate tax rate was 22%, its free cash flow to equity was closest to. So we're given free cash flow to the firm and some other numbers here, and we need to make adjustments to get to free cash flow to equity. Let's pull in that formula to do this. So we're going to take out interest times our tax rate, or 1 minus our tax rate. So we've got interest of 1.5 million, and then we're going to do 1 minus 0.22. And what that's reflecting is that we can deduct interest, which would have flowed through to free cash flow to equity. So we need to make that adjustment. And then we're going to add back net borrowing. And we're adding back net borrowing because that's debt is going to be taking into account for free cash flow to equity, since debt holders are going to be paid before the equity. So that's the main difference between free cash flow to the firm and free cash flow to equity. When we make those adjustments, 12.5 million minus 1.5 million times 0.78, then we're adding in that net borrowing 3.5 million, gives us just under 15 million, which is going to line up right here with answer C. A firm purchased a 3-year callable bond for $950 with the intent of making a profit in the short term. After the first year of holding the security, the value of the bond has decreased to $890. If the firm reports under U.S. GAAP, determine the appropriate treatment of the amount of loss on the bond. So is it going to be no loss will be recognized, a loss of 60 will be recognized on the income statement, or C, a loss of 60 will be recognized in changes to stockholders' equity? So the key here is our bond did go down $60. So there's a loss of $60. But where do we classify this, or do we not classify it at all? So the key distinction here is whether we're holding the bond in order to make a profit, or are we holding the bond with the intent to just holding it to maturity? So the intent here is making a profit in the short term. And so because of that, this is going to be classified as held for trading security. And when we're trading, that's considered a operating activity of the firm. And so that loss is going to flow through to our financial statements. If we were holding this till maturity, then the answer would be A, no recognized loss. And then are we doing this on the income statement or stockholders' equity? Again, since this is going to be considered an operating activity because we're making profit, we're going to include this on the income statement and go with answer B. An analyst gathered the following information about Yeasney. So we've got our income tax expense, and then we have change in deferred tax assets and change in deferred tax liabilities. So Yeasney's income tax payable is closest to. So we need to take these three numbers and adjust this for the tax that they're actually going to pay. So let's walk through this. It's just going to be some adding and subtracting, but we'll talk through kind of the concept here. So we're going to take that income tax expense, and then we need to adjust this for deferred tax assets and deferred tax liabilities. So for deferred tax assets, it becomes an asset because we're essentially prepaying taxes now that we should receive refund or money back in the future. So because we're paying more money now, that's going to increase the amount of tax that we're paying. So that's why this number is a positive. So we take that 120, we're going to add 1,500 to it because we're prepaying, so it's making our expenses in the current period higher. Deferred tax liability is going to be the exact opposite. Essentially, it becomes a liability because it is tax that we owe, but we're not paying it now. So because we're not paying it now, it becomes a liability that we will have to pay in the future. So that's why it becomes a liability. But since we're not paying it now, we can subtract this from our income tax expense of 120. So when we subtract 5,000, add 1,500, we get 116,500, which is going to be answer A. A firm reported the following. So we've got net income, non-cash charges, interest expense, capex, and tax rate. The company's free cash flow to the firm is closest to. So we're going to take all these numbers here and make adjustments to the net income to get to our free cash flow to the firm. So let's pull that in. So our free cash flow to the firm from net income is going to be our net income, and then we're going to add back non-cash charges. So this is normally things like depreciation and amortization, things that we're expensing but technically aren't a cash outflow. So we've got 2 million plus 70,000, and then we're going to add back our interest expense multiplied by 1 minus our tax rate. And so that's going to be 200 times 0.55. And then lastly, we're going to subtract out our fixed capital investment and our working capital investment. So we don't have any working capital expenditures. We just have fixed capital, which is our CapEx line item. So we're just going to subtract out 150 from there, and that gives us 2.03 million, which will be answer A. And we've had some other questions on this as well. I would highly recommend making flashcards for each of these. So make a flashcard for free cash flow to the firm starting from net income, and then write out this formula on the other side. And then I would make another flashcard that is free cash flow to the firm starting with cash flow from operations, and get that formula right on the other side. And same thing for free cash flow to the firm from free cash flow to equity, and right on the other side. You want to commit all those to memory so that when one of these comes up and you are able to go from any starting point and get to that free cash flow to the firm. And you want to do the same thing with free cash flow to equity. So free cash flow to equity starting with net income, and so on and so forth. Answer A. An analyst gathered the following information about a company. So it looks like we have some balance sheet information, cash, accounts receivable, inventories, accounts payable, and then we have revenue numbers, sales, and cost of goods sold. So these would be on our income statement, and these 4 would be on our balance sheet. The company's cash conversion cycle is closest to, and we're going to be doing a calculation here. So let's pull in a bunch of formulas here that we're going to run through. And I'm going to bring it all the way down here so we can see everything. So our cash conversion cycle is going to be equal to, let me see if I can get all this in here. Okay. It's going to be equal to number of days inventory plus number of days receivables minus number of days payables. So we're looking to convert all these numbers into days, essentially, since we're just given numbers. And so to do that, we're going to be using our 365 and certain different things in the denominator to kind of adjust what we need to. So number of days inventory on hand, we're going to do 365 times inventory. So we were given that inventory number on the balance sheet, and then we're dividing that by cost of goods sold over this period. And so our cost of goods sold essentially is representative of inventory that we bought during the period, that we sold during the period. And so we're taking inventory on the balance sheet, adjusting that for the full year, and then dividing by what we actually sold during that period. So we have 143.87 days inventory on hand. And then from here, number of days receivable, similar idea, 365 times those accounts receivable, and then we're dividing that by sales. And so that gives us 114.45. So these two first numbers are going to be added together, and then the last one will be subtracted out. 365 times accounts payable divided by cost of goods sold, and when we work that through, we get 103.45. Add, subtract, and we get 154.87, and so we're going to round that up so we have a full day of 155 days. Answer B. Compared to the same period last year, Wind Corporation's tax rate has increased from 22% to 25%. Therefore, Wind Corporation's A, deferred tax asset has increased, B, deferred tax liability has increased, or C, deferred tax assets and liability have both increased. So this one's going to be answer C. A increase in the tax rate is going to make these values both go up because it's creating a higher amount that the corporation technically is going to owe in the future. And so it's making these amounts higher so that it can offset those higher amounts, essentially. So the fact that it's a liability or an asset doesn't really matter. It's just going to change the future actual rate of those because they're sitting on the balance sheet and haven't actually been paid yet. So when we originally put them on the balance sheet, it might have been that they were going to be paid based on a 22% rate. But since it's going to be based on a 25% rate now, they're both going to increase. Answer C. Which of the following most likely has an impact on revenue recognition? So for something to have an impact on revenue recognition, it's probably going to be more timing related of when we are providing our services or when we're considering the job to be done, so to speak. So we've got a change in credit limits. This probably won't have an impact on revenue recognition. What this might have an impact on is our accounts receivable. If we're changing credit limits for customers, they may take more time to pay us after we've actually recognized revenue. But this is going to be after the fact of revenue recognition. B, a change in delivery terms. This could certainly have an impact on revenue recognition. So I'm going to go ahead and circle that for now, especially if you're thinking about something in the context of professional services. If the revenue is recognized when the engagement starts versus when I provide advice or some type of service to you, that's going to impact when revenue is recognized. Or in the case of physical products, the revenue recognition could happen at the point of sale or once the item is delivered, if it needs to be delivered, something like that. So a change in those terms is going to change when revenue is recognized. And C, a change in payment terms with customers. Again, this is similar to A. It might change our accounts receivable balance, but it's not going to change when we're recognizing revenue. Answer B. DiCorp reported in 2014 a net income of $1.2 million, total assets and debt of $8.5 million and $1.5 million, respectively. Assuming that total debt equals total liabilities, DiCorp's debt to capital ratio is closest to. So the key here, we're going to be looking at the debt and the assets and the debt. We are not going to be looking at net income. That was thrown in there to throw you off. It's not needed to calculate debt to capital. So our debt to capital formula, coming down here first, is going to be debt divided by debt plus equity. So we're not given equity, we're given assets. So we will need to impute equity. And equity is going to be equal to assets minus liabilities. So we'll do 8.5 minus 1.5 gives us equity of 7. So we can see that's going to be 1.5 divided by 8.5 after we add debt to equity in that denominator. And really debt to equity is equal to assets. So could have been a shortcut there, but I think it was helpful to walk through the relationship between assets and liabilities again as a refresher. And so that's going to be equal to 17.65, which if we round that up, it's going to be closest to answer B. Consider the following information about Zynga Company. So we've got the year and then some financial metrics here: net profit, asset turnover, return on assets, and return on equity. In 2014, the net profit margin for Zynga Company is closest to. So we're going to be using the DuPont analysis framework here to calculate the net profit margin. So let's walk through this using the numbers that we're given. So we'll have ROE is going to be equal to net profit margin times asset turnover times financial leverage. We're given ROE, we're given asset turnover, and what we're going to be solving for is net profit margin. We also need to calculate financial leverage. So financial leverage is going to be done using return on assets and return on equity. So we can see that formula here. ROE divided by ROA gives us financial leverage of 2/3 essentially. So we'll plug that into financial leverage, and we're going to plug all these others in. So the starting formula, we get 0.06 equals x times 0.4 times 0.667. And when we do our algebra there, we're going to get x equals 0.2249, which is our net profit margin. And that's going to round closest to answer C, 22% after we round that down. Finmotor paid $459 million to acquire Car Wash, whose net fair value amounted to $387 million. If Finmotors reports under IFRS and Car Wash reports under US GAAP, how should Finmotor account for the balance of the amount? So the acquirer, we're going to be using IFRS to account for this. So the fact that Car Wash reports under US GAAP is not relevant. We want to make our answer under IFRS assumptions, since that's what the new parent company is going to be using. So is that going to be accounted for on goodwill, transferred to the capital reserve, or transferred to the revaluation surplus account? Revaluation surplus account, this is used more so for current assets or fixed assets on the balance sheet already, not related to acquisitions. So if I had a fixed asset and it went up a bunch in value, then you could add that increased value to this revaluation surplus account as an asset. B, the transfer to the capital reserve. This is more so going to be held under equity, and it's funds that can't really be distributed to as dividends to shareholders, not related to acquisitions again. And then A, goodwill. This is certainly going to be related to acquisition, and it's essentially kind of the intangible value that is assumed to make up this difference. So they're overpaying by 72 million because of brand reasons, or essentially they think the company is worth more to that because of synergies or some other reason. So it gets recorded as an asset of goodwill. Answer A.